In the last few minutes, it's been confirmed the Prime Minister has told the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, to pack her bags. He sacked her. That's after a week of really controversial comments by Suella. And the firing then sparks a cabinet reshuffle. He gets rid of her. He's got to fill her job. He's got to fill the job left by the person, etc. Owen, your thoughts?
Well, I'm not sorry to see her go, to say the least. She is a hate monger. She whipped up bile against desperate people from other countries. She talked about immigration as an existential threat to Western civilization. She compared migrants to a hurricane, which is a natural disaster which kills people en masse. And what she did this weekend is whip up a far-right mob who stormed the cenotaph and went on the rampage, racially abusing protesters all over London. That itself, I think, was one of the lowest points. She described hundreds of thousands of people who object to the mass slaughter of innocent civilians as a hate march, whilst deliberately stoking up a mob of, and we saw what happened, which is those who defiled the Armistice Day, when we were supposed to be remembering the dead, were those far-right lunatics, which she and her government encouraged. But I would just say, finally on it, don't let her be the fall guy. This isn't just her. The whole government did that. And so did many of their media allies. It'd be so easy for me to go, this demonic figure has been removed, when actually the government led by Rishi Sunak is responsible not for the bile and also for the far-right mob.
Angela was sighing a bit while you were speaking.
Yeah, because the thing is, Owen, it disappoints me because what you don't realise in the way that you rebadge and reframe the narrative and show your selective moral outrage, you are an unintended consequence, I'm absolutely sure, becoming an instrument of hatred and anti-Semitism. And let me explain why. I said it's an unintended consequence. I know that is not what your desired position would be. But let me tell you, as a Jewish person and as a member of the human race, this kicked off on October the 7th, because obviously the immediate thing she's been sacked for, the hate marches, etc., or the so-called. October the 7th, Hamas committed an unprovoked attack. They slaughtered 1,400 people in cold blood, beheaded babies, mutilated pregnant women, raped, murdered. As we speak, and I notice you haven't mentioned them, Owen, there are over 240 people held hostage as we sit here in the comfort of the studio, somewhere in the bowels of Gaza, including a 10-month-old baby, who were just sleeping in their beds. They were not military targets.
And how does this relate to Suella?
I'll tell you how it relates, because what's happening is the finger has swung over to Suella as the reason behind this. The very first march that happened against in this subject happened on October the 14th. That was before even Israel had started its ground offensive and its military campaign. And as soon as October the 7th happened, and I was in Israel when it happened at the time, so I've seen it from there and I've seen it from here, there was an unleashing of racial hatred and anti-Semitism and disgusting anti-Jewish feeling on our streets. Now, people are entitled to legitimate criticism of the Israeli government.
Do you think she did not go too far then?
No, I don't. No, on this point, no.
So calling them hate marchers?
It was a hate march. Why weren't you calling out for the release of hostages? Why weren't you standing on a soapbox saying,
OK, let Owen reply, because he's been accused here.
What you said about me personally was outrageous, and I think the vast majority of people who watched it, in the same way that when Putin calls people who oppose what's happening in Ukraine is anti-Russian, those of us who oppose the Iraq war were called stooges of Saddam Hussein. We've been through this over and over again. What Hamas did on the 7th of October was despicable, the mass slaughter of innocent people. And nobody rational disagrees with that. This demonstration, which included Christians, Muslims, and Jewish protesters. There was a Jewish bloc led, for example, by Nahamod. Nahamod will you roll your eyes?
No,
Nahamod are Jewish peace activists who are always integral. They were there proudly wearing the yarmulkes on this march, and they often themselves have placards, which, by the way, say ceasefire now and release the hostages. This is the point, Angela. This is the absolute crucial point. 1,000, over 1,000 Israeli civilians who were murdered. That was intolerable. That was an intolerable death toll for those civilians. What is also intolerable is the collective punishment of the Palestinian people, in which several times, I mean, we're talking now, including if you think about the bodies decomposing in rubble being eaten by the starving dogs of Gaza, 13 times as many people now have been killed in Gaza. These are men, women and children. Over 5,000 children. We now have babies who are now suffocating because their incubators have been switched off.
Right.
And this is the crucial point.
We're moving away from Suella Braverman.
Well, I had to respond. What am I supposed to do in these
respond because I want...
circumstances?
you responded.
And just the crucial point to respond, and this is about Suella Braverman.
Okay.
Our government, obviously, does not arm and back Hamas. The taking of hostages is a war crime by Hamas. Nobody disputes that.
Who broke the ceasefire with Israel?
Well, on that, just on that, well, if we want to keep jumping in, I'll respond. Can I respond to that?
No, because we need to talk about Suella Braverman.
It's difficult, Jeremy, when I get these points thrown at me, because I do need to respond.
You responded.
Okay, I'll tell you why it's important, because it's all about the use of language. You use the language of mass slaughter.
Yeah.
As soon as you said that, you have a huge platform on places like Twitter, and with that privilege comes a responsibility.
Right.
And the uninitiated that hear you using words like mass slaughter when the Israeli government, a sovereign nation, is doing its best to recover the hostages. If Hamas surrendered the hostages tomorrow... let me finish. It would stop.
He's talking about civilians dying.
Okay.
So they are dying as a consequence, and a third of the rockets that Hamas fire fall on Gaza.
I need to take a call.
Okay, well,
somebody actually wants to talk about Suella Braverman.
It's just like astonishing when you have a show where you just get a load of stuff thrown at you and you can't respond to it.
You had ages to respond.
I did, and I didn't.
Angela was mean about
I think people watching this can come to their own conclusions about what's just happened.
I promise you responded. You said it was outrageous, etc. I promise you responded.
I haven't responded to those points.
I heard you. We're talking about Suella Braverman being sacked. Andrea in Surrey, do you think it's the right decision?
Oh, it's not, Jeremy. Good morning to everyone on the panel. It's not. And I just turned the TV and was absolutely shocked. That woman is just using the platform she has to voice the opinion of the majority. And I'm sorry for the young lad on the panel. Nobody said that the government backs Hamas. That's not the point. The point is how on earth, as a British person, you allow this march to go ahead on a very important weekend in this country.
Well, because marches are allowed. Generally, marches are allowed. I mean, that's the point.
I understand that. And I'm not against it. I'm not against it.
You sound like Andrea. Andrea, we have Armistice Day, sometimes which falls on a Saturday. What happens on Armistice Day is there is a 2-minute silence at 11 a.m. I remember, for example, my great-great-uncle was mowed down on the Somme, my great-granddad who died serving the RAF in World War II, and I remember all those who died in that war. In World War II, we fought the Nazis to defend rights and freedoms which our own people fought for in this country at great cost and sacrifice. That includes the right to peacefully protest. There's never been a shutdown of normal life on Armistice Day. And I would know a far-right mob was whipped up, and they're the ones who stormed the cenotaph. Our march was going nowhere near the cenotaph. It never was.
What about the hatred placards?
And the other point is the hatred placards. There were 800,000 people.
Gaza is twinned with Auschwitz.
There were 800,000 people on that protest, and there were.
Down those placards?
Yes, I do condemn those placards, and I note there were 10 examples which are now on the Metropolitan Police and British Transport Police's Twitter feeds.
10 of illegal placards
out of 800,000. That is 0.00175%.
All right, I tell you what. Let's just put. I mean, I would just say you two see this very differently. And the issue about Suella is that she waded in with her size 10s and stirred it up.
But
arguably, she made it what we just
ripped up the far-right mob.
She made it worse.
I'm sorry, absolutely not. It's an absolute disgrace, objectively.
I thought we'd agree on that.
No, that she didn't whip up the mobs. She didn't.
She made this worse. This is what we've seen this morning.
Jeremy, please, okay. Nobody wanted, most of all Israel, for that unprovoked attack, that horrible massacre, the slaughter in cold blood to happen. The day before in Israel,
she made
I was
people
going about
angrier.
my
I do know, Jeremy, why is she allowed to just go off topic and talk about what's happening and I'm not?
It seems
astonishing.
I am coming to Suella.
Can I respond to that point about... Am I allowed to...
No, hang on.
The point is that
had equal time, but it's about to change in your...
Andrea has just said that she speaks to the majority. There was hatred on that.
All right, you said that. You said that.
Okay, in terms of...
Go on, Owen, just conclude and then we'll go to our break and we'll talk more.
In terms of the government that Suella Braverman is backing, and you say that the Israeli government is trying to avoid civilian casualties, Benjamin Netanyahu quoted Amalek from the Bible, which calls for all men and women and children to be murdered. This weekend, an Israeli minister called for a new Nakba. He said they're doing a new Nakba in Gaza. For those who don't know, the Nakba was the mass expulsion of 700,000 Palestinians in 1948. Israeli officials have said we're going to reduce Gaza to a city of tents in which no buildings are left standing. There are now around 13,000. Okay. When I say mass slaughter, you say it's inflammatory.
You're going now doing a whole cavalcade. I know, but we have to be able to have some... Pause. Angela, wait.
Okay, let's just... Amalek wrong. He needs to get his facts right.
The facts are right about that.
He's said what he thinks. OK, that's what we're allowed to do. OK, it's heating up at Downing Street.